Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar this evening. I did want to spend one moment just advertising again our intensives, just because I just finished one, a 4-day private intensive with a family, and it was wonderful. We're having one come up. We have a couple of spaces left for our parenting intensive. It's a 4-day intensive. It starts, I believe, on a Thursday. I believe that's a Thursday and ends on a Sunday. So if you have the opportunity and you can make it, please send Stephanie an email, stephanie@evoketherapy.com. If finances are a challenge for you, we're going to make this possible for families if we can possibly do that. So we have a parenting one on September 10th through 13th. We also have an individual one that's for any individual. It can be a parenting issue, a stage of life issue, a young adult issue, and that'll be October 8th through 11th. These are the last two that I can guarantee that I will be running. And then beyond that, we're going to be introducing some of our other Evoke therapists into the mix, into that process. So I just wanted to tell you that. I'll remind you again at the end because it was such a powerful experience. So tonight's webinar is about siblings. And this is for siblings or about siblings. So if you are a sibling and you have a question, please submit it now or at any time during the broadcast. Please make sure that you include your age because that's helpful for me to know what age of person that I'm speaking to. I'm going to speak differently to a 25-year-old than I am going to speak to a 10-year-old. So please let me know your age. We only have 2 submitted questions prior to the webinar, so that's why I'm taking a little bit more time to lead into it. If you are a parent and you have a question about a sibling, or if you know that your sibling has a question and they are not able to attend for any reason, please also submit these. Stephanie will collect any comments, any questions, and then she will send them on to me after I finish the 2 pre-submitted questions. All right, how do you determine where kids should go after their time in your program? For example, do you typically recommend group homes, boarding schools, question mark, 30-year-old sister? Typically, we will work in conjunction with an educational consultant. It's not required, but it is recommended. So in those cases, what we do is we give updates to the consultant. And an educational consultant is a professional that really more aptly might be called a placement specialist. They are the ones who recommend children and clients to our program. So we will work with a consultant. It's their job to know programs, to know personnel, to know programs all across the country. They have to visit a certain amount of them to become certified. They have to keep updated in terms of their ongoing education about these programs. And so we will give them the criteria, we'll give them the things that work for your brother or sister, and we'll give them what doesn't work. We'll get what we think is most important. We'll prioritize for them what's most important, and then they make the recommendation. In some cases, when a family comes without an educational consultant, they might have a home therapist or somebody else who's working with them at home, and we would have that same kind of relationship with them. And in some cases, if they're not working with anybody and they're not able or willing to hire an educational consultant, then the Evoke therapist can also give them, without the same kind of qualifications and skill level, and creating the kind of seamless transition, they will provide them with names of programs that they're aware of, and then give you, the parent or the client, the charge to study those and to look at what might be the best fit, the best feel for them. So that's typically the way that it goes. Most often, and what we recommend is an educational consultant or a placement specialist, and then home therapists, home professionals can also serve in that role sometimes. And then if nothing else, we can provide you with a list of schools and you can look at those. But it's not with the same kind of qualifying information that a consultant or a treatment placement specialist would have. So that's how we do it. We also have a webinar on how to choose the best fit aftercare that you're welcome to look at and that your parents, of course, are welcome to look at. Will I be able to visit my brother, 13-year-old sister? Typically, during their stay here at Evoke, we don't have siblings visit. So that's the short answer. We don't typically often have siblings visit. It's a very short program, relatively speaking, although it does feel long to you when you're missing him or her. Um, it's a relatively short program, and so we don't have you visit. We will encourage you and your parents to have you visit after they get to a therapeutic school or program afterwards, if that is the case. Or if they come home, of course, you're going to spend time with them. But oftentimes, it's a very therapeutic session, very therapeutic time, very therapeutic visit. And so a lot of times, if a 13-year-old sibling will come out there, brother or sister, it's so hard for them to understand what's trying to be accomplished. So we want to spend as much time as possible, as much focused and concentrated time as possible on your brother in this case or your sister. And then we're going to encourage visiting after our program completes, after they graduate from our program, either at home or at the therapeutic school or program that your brother or sister is living at. So sorry and sad to say that, but that is typically the case. All right. I don't know if any questions have come in. This might be a very short webinar, but Stephanie, if there are any questions, or I'll give a few moments for you guys to come up with questions, and then I can answer them. So, first one, what impact do siblings who use alcohol or even or marijuana have on the recovery of those in Evoke Wilderness Therapy? What advice do you give the siblings and parents regarding this age 26 sibling? I mean, there's two thoughts that I have about this. First thought is no matter what they're going back to in terms of parents or siblings, we try to do our best to inoculate them, to prepare them to be able to deal with it. If a person is committed to their recovery and their mental health, and they're going to encounter influences, sometimes negative, sometimes intending inadvertently, innocently at times, but sometimes trying to drag them back to the same place. So we try to prepare the client or student for that experience. So my answer is it would be ideal if immediate family members weren't using to any great extent drugs and alcohol. That would be the ideal, but we can't always count on that. So just like everything in a family or everything in the context that they're going to be joining after Evoke, we try to encourage the client or student to work on their own recovery, work on themselves, work on their own healing, work on their own therapy. And if there are things in their life, places in their life, where they're going to be more susceptible or vulnerable, then in many cases we will ask them to remove themselves from that. If they can, if they're a young adult, right? In the case of adolescents, they might not have that capability. So what can you do? You know, there's an old saying in recovery circles that says, in order to be successful in recovery, it's important that you change your playground and your playmates. And that's true for any age. So we want them to be humble enough, to be aware enough, to be courageous enough to realize I can't walk into a bar. I can't hang out with any length of time for people that are getting high or drinking or doing drugs. I can't do that. So I'm going to have to separate myself from that person in a given moment or instance. So that's what we do is we try to prepare them as best possible, no matter what the next step and who's around them, to be responsible for their own recovery, which includes a certain amount of humility to realize I can't fix my brother or sister or my parents that are using. I can't fix my friends that are using. I can't fix everybody. And that's oftentimes where they go to. But rather, I can keep myself healthy and sober and clean. And to do that, and oftentimes I might need to be watchful. I might need to be vigilant and careful about who I allow myself and what contexts, what situations I allow myself to be in. So that's really how we work on it. If there are parents and siblings who need treatment or are willing to be abstinent, that can be very, very helpful. Now, I'll qualify that with one thing. If there are parents or of age, adult people in their life who are using alcohol legally and using it, on occasion socially, and I guess the same would be true with marijuana in states where it's legal. I suppose that would now be true in today's age. It's not a requirement. You don't have to never use, right? It's not your. Sometimes people will do it to be helpful, but sometimes I've even had family members abstain from social drinking and then feel resentful when and if their sibling or their son or daughter relapsed. So you can't make them stop. It's not a guarantee that they're stopped. You can be sensitive and aware of it. Most people that I know that are in recovery, most people that I know who know that they can't use alcohol or a legal drug, that they can't use it with success, most people will know that's not me. It doesn't matter what you do. I can't do it. I'm not going to put myself in situations where I'm tempted, where I'm overwhelmed by it, but that's a different thing. And that's not my business. So we do talk to them about that. I'm having trouble understanding exactly what my sister is feeling and what her thought process is. I know she has depression, but I don't know what the experience is like for her. How can I understand more, and what can I do to help? First of all, the fact that you're asking a question is really important. I mean, I don't want to just stop here, but the desire to understand is important. And I think most important, I mean, you can read books about depression, and if you go to our alumni book page on Amazon, there are books there about depression that talk about what it's like. Um, but I think it's okay to not know from firsthand experience what she's going through. I think offering her that would be a great gift. So that's one thought about it. The second thought is let her tell you as much as possible and then take it at face value. And so, even though you and your rational mind might not understand that when you feel depressed, you don't want to go outside, you don't want to exercise, you don't want to eat right, you don't want to be social, right? And you, in your rational mind, know that many of those things would actually be the cure or the antidote for depression, right? They would be part of the treatment plan for depression. But there's a certain kind of helplessness that prevents the person from realizing those things. So just knowing that it's not rational, just knowing that you don't understand, just knowing that you don't have it can be helpful. And just understanding the story of your sister's depression at face value is really, really great, really, really wonderful. And I'm sure there are things in your life, fears, issues that if you approached rationally would disappear, right? So you can relate to them in different areas of your life. It might be around fitness. It might be around some phobia or fear you have about heights or spiders or what have you, anything. And so you can understand that even though it's irrational, it's not something you can consciously control, would be a way to meet her somewhere in the middle and understand. But listen to her story, ask her lots of questions, admit that you don't know what it's like personally, and then take it at face value and stop trying to reason her or anyone out of it because it's not a reasonable mind. Anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, mood disorders, they're not from the reasonable part of their brain. And then, like I said, reading or even the webinars we have on mood disorders can be helpful for you. So those are some thoughts. But asking, being interested, telling her you attended a webinar, telling her you're picking up a book on depression. Ask her if she has a book to suggest to you. I mean, all of those things. And then finding ways that you can identify with it in small ways. Because everybody can identify with the fact that we make at times irrational decisions. Decisions based on something that we don't quite understand. That if we were in our perfect rational mind, we wouldn't make. And if you can relate to it on that level, that's quite a gift to her. So thanks for asking the question and thanks for being interested. Is it better for someone who has finished the Evoke Wilderness Therapy program to not enter into a home where roommates, including a sibling, drink alcohol, 26-year-old sibling? I think it's ideal, yes. The answer is simply and clearly yes. That's not the ideal. That's less than optimal, for sure. Absolutely. By the way, we have some 26, 25, some adult 30-year-old siblings on. You're also welcome. One of the ways you could do this is to attend. I'm going to go out of this, Stephanie, and come back. I don't want to oversell it, but just getting off one, it's very intense. It's very intense for me and very powerful for me. This Finding You intensive, October 8th through 11th, would be a wonderful way to do some of your work to support them. So that's something you could do. It's really for anybody. It's about doing your own work. The best thing that any parent and sibling can do is to do their own work. That is, say, I'm not the cause. This is not about blame, especially particularly for siblings. This is not about blame, but I have stuff that I could work on. I have stuff that I could look at. I could look more deeply. The hard part for parents and siblings is they're not experiencing, firsthand at least, they're not experiencing the kind of pain and distress that the child, the young adult or adolescent childhood at our program is experiencing. So they don't have that need to do this kind of work, but it's incredibly valuable and it's much richer. And the family that I had, they would tell you, in fact, let's see if they're on here. They're not on here tonight. But the parents who just attended this recent one of them said to me, I had no idea, thinking that I came from and still thinking I come from an absolutely wonderful family. I had no idea how much my family, my childhood impacts my issue. I didn't know that the issues that I have with my child came from that. I didn't know that until I had this experience and really went deeper into it. So it's hard if you don't experience distress to need to go deeper into yourself. I have found that going deeper into myself, even when I'm not in crisis or distress, is very, very rewarding. But I'm also a therapist working with people with emotional and substance abuse challenges. So I'm a little bit different in that way. All right, Stephanie, you can bring it back to the questions if there are any. How much can I ask my sister about Evoke after she returns home? Sister, 25 years old. I think just about anything. There's no limit. We did this. We do this exercise where I draw three circles on the ground. One circle represents you. The middle circle represents the relationship, and the other circle represents the other person in the relationship. And what we teach is the first circle is you, is your stuff, is yourself. And so, and the other person is responsible for their circle. They're responsible for both staying in their circle, and so are you, but they're also responsible for not letting anybody else get into their circle. So the reason I tell you the analogy or the story, the intervention of the three circles, is that you get to do your circle. You get to ask questions. And then she gets to set boundaries. You can identify and say, I know when my daughter just recently did an intensive, and I said the same thing to my son. I don't want to be intrusive, but I'm curious if you want to share anything with me. And in both cases with my children, they had something to talk about me, which was all the more difficult and rewarding at the same time. So my answer is to this question, you get to ask her whatever you want. You can make a statement about being sensitive and not being intrusive, but let her do her. Let her take care of herself, especially if she's older. If you're 25 and she's, you know, 17, 18, 19, 20, somewhere older than that, or in that range, tell her she can set the boundary if she wants to. And she'll actually be pretty good at it, I imagine. So ask what you want, and in many cases, they'll want to tell you lots about it. If you, any of you siblings, or parents who have siblings at home, if they want to watch any of the webinars about any topic, please share with them your password so that they can look at them, because showing interest in learning about what your brother or sister is going through is a wonderful, wonderful gift to them. They don't want to be alone on this life raft, right? They want to know other people have questions, other people have struggles, other people aren't perfect, other people don't have all the answers. They want that. They don't want to be alone on this. They don't want to be the identified patient. As far as I'm concerned, too, any of you siblings or adult siblings are welcome on any of these webinars, anytime, even live. How should I change my behavior when my sibling comes home? I like to use technology for entertainment sometimes, and my sibling won't be able to, age 12. Wonderful question. I think being sensitive, I think talking about it and being aware, maybe asking him what might be helpful for him or her. I assume it's a him. Is it a him? Doesn't say, but let's just speak as if it's a him. Ask him if it's hard. You know, we were just talking about this weekend with the staff. Sometimes the staff will bring their own food out there, their own treats for the week that they work. And we ask the staff to be discreet. What I mean by that is you don't want to eat a cookie right sitting across from a student or a client, right? That would be not sensitive. But you don't also want to hide and lie about it and be off sneaking it away, because it doesn't need to be lied about. It's okay for you to use technology for entertainment, and it might not be for them. And so asking questions about how you can be sensitive but not feeling like you have to hide it would be a really important discussion for you to have as a family. And in most cases, just you asking them what they would like and what might be helpful oftentimes makes it easier for them. Then they know that you care. Then they know that you're sensitive to their problems, their challenges. And then they oftentimes will give you permission. That's just a therapy word. It's not really permission, but they'll tell you it's okay that you do whatever you need to do whatever you want to do. And sometimes they might say it would be more helpful for a little while if you do that in the other room. It'd be more helpful when I'm around if you could not do it. And you might be able to do that for them. So, great question. And just the fact that you asked it of me and then you could ask it to them is a wonderful thing for them. How should I or should I not talk about with my brother about his experience at Evoke, 13-year-old sister? I think the most important thing, this is a great question. I think there's several things, but the most important thing for all of you siblings is that you ask them questions. Ask them what they want you to know. Ask them how you can be helpful. Ask them what would be hurtful. So I think asking questions is number one. Number two, to talk about it in non-shameful ways. See, everybody, my experience of Evoke is that it's not for, in fact, one of my students, one of my clients said it this weekend, that he was afraid when he came to Evoke that he was going to be in a group with losers who were all sick. That's the way he thought about it before he came. But now that he's been here for 5 weeks, he said to me, everybody in my group is a winner because every in my group wants to work on their problems. In his case, they are all young adults, but they want to work on their problems. So after asking questions, I think the most important thing is don't talk about it in terms of shameful labels like sick and crazy, because it's just people who need help. And that's all of us. So I think that would be most helpful. I think the third most important thing is talk about it in some way. I think it can be shaming, right? It can feel bad if you're afraid to talk about it. But even if you're afraid to talk about it, tell them you're afraid to talk about it. Don't not talk about it. Say, I'm afraid and uncomfortable and I don't know how to talk about it. That would be a great opening statement. How would you, I'll go back to this question. How would you, I'm curious, or I don't know what to say. How would you like me to talk about it, brother or sister? That would be wonderful for them. And they'll be able to tell you. And in most cases, they'll say whatever you want, because they're not ashamed anymore. Or ask me anything you want. Or why wouldn't you? It's for them, it's like you saying, if they went to the amusement park for a day, how would you talk to them about that? Because they're not thinking about Evoke and the problems that got them sent to Evoke or the problems that led them to choose to come to Evoke. They're not thinking about them in bad or negative ways. And so not talking about it in many ways would send a message that something about it is crazy, or you're uncomfortable with it. Something's wrong with it. So ask them, lastly. So ask questions, stay away from labels, negative labels, and then ask them how they would like to talk about it. Don't avoid talking about it. That in and of itself can be a shameful message. What help do siblings of those in Evoke program typically need in terms of help or counseling due to their strained and dysfunctional relationship with their sibling who has caused strained relationship, 26-year-old sibling? That's a great question. Here's my model that I talk to our clients about. Ask the people in your life that you have these kinds of issues with. Ask them to come to therapy, not to fix them, but to help you. Hey, brother or sister or mom or dad or spouse, or even a parent asking another child, will you come to therapy to help me? I need to do some work. Will you come to help me, to support me? So that's the first thing, is ask people to come to help you, not to go to therapy to fix themselves. That's the first thought that I have. And I think just getting involved, I think watching, I'm going to come out of the skin. Stephanie, you can bring me back in. But these most recommended webinars, watch a few of them. Just start to learn some of the language. This first one right here, the I feel statement, just look at that. Learn the same song that they're learning. Learn some of the same language that they're learning. Would be very, very helpful for them. All the rest of these are great. Let's look at what else we have. Healthy detachment is another great one. Intentional parenting, although it's not for siblings, is a fantastic one to understand the principles involved. And there's webinars on wilderness therapy. So anything you'd be willing to do, so at least you understand some of the common language, would be extraordinarily supportive for your brother or sister. And then be willing to go to or their therapy, or ask them to come to your therapy to help you, would be fantastic. So education, exposure, participating in therapy are all things. If they go to Al-Anon or AA or NA, ask them if they would like company, or just go. Just go and say, I went to an AA meeting because I wanted to see what it was like. Or I went to a Codependence Anonymous meeting or an Al Anon meeting just to see what it's like. I'm going to go back out of it again. Stephanie, you can bring me back in. These things right here, okay, let me just say this because I know I get kind of passionate about these things. But any family member, particularly parents, but siblings also, if you want to support your brother or sister or child, the best thing you can do is to do your own work. That's number one. There's not even a close second. And every therapist in any field that I know who's been doing it for any length of time would tell you the same thing. Do your work. Do some of your work. And if you have a sibling that specifically is dealing with drugs, but it also applies, folks, to not just drugs, but to any self-defeating behavior, go to Coda or Al Anon. And you go to these websites and you find, if you went to 2 or 3 of these meetings, we ask parents to go to 6 minimum while their child is with us. But you go to these meetings and then you start to share, you start to understand, you start to be with other family members. And by the way, there are people at these meetings who are adults who have siblings, have parents, have spouses that are addicts or depressed people or other things that are self-defeating, and they're learning how to be in a relationship with that person that's healthy and supportive, and also that focuses on their side of the street. That's a slogan that they have. Stay on your side of the street. So do that, and you can't. I just can't emphasize this enough, folks. You're not going to get it. Your child is not going to get out. Your brother and sister is not going to get as much out of this program if people aren't doing some of this work around them. They're not. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uphill. It's going to be one hand tied behind their back. So go to it. And brother and sister that are listening to this webinar, poke your parents in the ribs and saying, have you gone to your 6 meetings yet? I heard Brad say passionately over and over again that it's important. Have you gone? I'll go with you. Let's go together. Brad says that'll make a bigger difference than anything that he knows in terms of what we can control that will have a positive impact on Joey or Johnny or Susie. So let's do it. That was kind of manipulative of me, but I said it anyway. All right, next one. What is the best way for a sibling to help encourage a sibling to do the best thing for him or herself when they come back? Specifically, how can I help promote continued recovery and responsibility once my brother comes back? What are some of the best ways to be supportive and then let him know that I'm here for him when and if he needs me? 18-year-old brother. Such a cool question. I love these sibling webinars. Such a great question. Stephanie, I didn't do that. Thank you. I'll say one thing, and I won't be too repetitive because I was already just repetitive enough. Go to those meetings. That's the best thing you can do. Go to one of those. If they're dealing with alcohol or drugs, go to AA or NA once or twice and just see what it's like. Go to Al-Anon or Coda if they're dealing with drugs or alcohol, just to see what it's like. Just work on it. They don't need lecturing. They don't need advice. They don't need guilting. They don't need you to make them accountable. What they need from you is the gift of humility, the gift of looking at yourself. There are ways to talk. We talk about in this program about when we share from an I statement. I feel, in my experience. They don't need you statements. They don't need you need to do this, you need to do that. They don't need lessons and lectures. They need other people around them that are looking inward. In our groups or in our family intensives or parent intensives, it's a rule that you don't give advice. It's a rule that you don't tell somebody else what to do. And it is strongly encouraged that you say, here's what I struggle with. Or I don't struggle with that, but I struggle with this. Something kind of like it. Or it's a little bit different, but I can see the similarities. Right? That's what they need. They need to know that they're not the only person. So doing your work, looking at yourself, no lecturing, no telling them what to do, no you messages, but rather I messages. This is my experience. This is what I've learned. This is what I struggle with. I don't know if it applies to you or not. I messages instead of you messages are clear. But the more vulnerable, for all of you, parents and siblings alike, the more vulnerable you can be, the more humble you can be. We're asking these people that come to our program to open themselves up, to really learn how to feel instead of mask the feeling with drugs or alcohol or other negative behaviors, right? We're asking them for that. And we're also saying to the family members, if you do that too, number one, if you can't do that, if you won't do that, if you have excuses not to do that, guess what? Those are the same excuses that your brother or sister or child has. In the book Addictive Thinking that I've done a webinar on, it talks about that the same excuses and defenses and justifications that family members have for not doing their work, not going to their meetings, are the exact same things that alcoholic, drug addicts, and other people that are struggling have for not doing their work. It's not for me. I can't relate. Those people aren't like me. I don't really have a problem. You know, on and on and on. I don't have time. It's not necessary. All of those things. All of the same excuses that your brother or sister who is at Evoke has for not working on their problems or issues are the same exact problems that parents, and in this case it could be siblings, often have for not willing to do the kind of work that I'm encouraging you to do. So if nothing else, you know what it's like to not want to do work. You know what it's like to feel uncomfortable. You know what it's like to be resistant to doing some of the work that you're encouraged or asked to do. Just walking into a session, walking into an Al-Anon or an AA meeting, sharing what that felt like with your brother or sister would be incredibly validating, because they were kind of, in many cases, thrown into this, sometimes encouraged into this, and sometimes, of course, they sought it out. But they had to walk into a group and open up and talk about their problems, their challenges, their struggles. And they were asked by us, by their parents, by their family, to open up, to get at the root of the problem. So you can at least tell them how hard or resistant or difficult or uncomfortable it felt for you to do the same thing. And then just let them know that you'll be there for him. That's a simple one. My brother lives with me. What is the best way to support him when he comes home without being his parent or letting him make me his main caretaker? Age 26 brother. So I mean, other than what I've said, again, learning about your circle, learning what your circle is really powerful. And the circle analogy, I think you were on when I said the circle is, one circle is you. So one circle is you, one circle is the relationship, one circle is them. Learning to be authentic, learning to be honest, learning not to manipulate. And manipulate sounds so negative, but we constantly try to manipulate and change other people, fix other people, make other people feel something or not feel something. And when we learn more about our circle, we learn to be more authentic and honest. We learn to be more transparent. We learn to let go of the outcome. We tell the truth more because we're not trying to get somebody to think or feel something. So learning about your circle, and however you might do that, watching some of these webinars, going to therapy yourself, going to the meetings that I mentioned, reading a book, reading my book, where I talk about the parenting journey, which applies to in this case, the sibling journey. But focus on your side of the street. I can't say that enough. Focus on your side of the street. Don't be an expert in his life, right? His accountability will come when you say, I can't live with that. I can't live with the lies, or I can't live with the drugs, or I can't live with the mess, or I can set that boundary for me. I can do that because that's my side of the street and I'm not okay with it. I won't live with that. But if it's, you need to do this and this is where you're broken and this is your problem and this is your issue and this is what you need to change, none of that's going to work. And by the way, that's the same exact advice I would give to parents, especially of young adults. Same exact advice. Same exact answer, I guess I would say. Not advice. Same answer. So work on your side of the street, principally. And trade you messages for I messages. And trade setting boundaries to fix him to setting boundaries to take care of yourself. Thank you for all the siblings on tonight. That's great. What do you recommend in situations where the relationship between the student and a sibling deteriorated significantly before therapy? At what point do you recommend trying to repair the relationship? I think it's important that both be ready. I think sometimes parents try to force it. And I think in some ways the trauma or the hurt or the anger is whitewashed away. It's erased when a parent tries to force it. So the first thing that I would do if I was working with a family and there was a sibling at home or a sibling of a child who was struggling with some of these issues, the first thing I would do is give them some choice. I would validate like crazy. I would validate and listen to their anger, to their hurt, to their fear, to their trauma. I would listen to all. I would give that plenty of space, plenty of respect. I would honor that. And I wouldn't too early or in the early stages try to force, even if I saw that they were struggling under the weight of those kinds of issues, I wouldn't force them toward reconciliation or toward a dialogue. I would give them permission to feel all of that hurt and to sit with it. And I would try to listen without trying to correct it or take it away or talk them out of it. That is the primary early goal. And then eventually, the sibling that was in the place that led them to come to Evoke, I would encourage them to ask questions and to listen. And by the way, most of your brothers and sisters who are in our program are going to be much, much, much more capable of listening to your hurt and your anger than they were before they left. In almost all cases, they're getting good at it. It'll be hard again when it's a family member because they practice it and become very good at it here at Evoke, but they'll be able to do it. And I would encourage them to say, tell me what you're feeling. Tell me how I hurt you. Tell me how I affected you. And I'll listen. I'll just listen. And then secondly, will you come to therapy to help me make amends, to help me repair this? But give this I'll say the offended, the at-home sibling that in many cases was subjected to trauma. Give them space and honor their pain. And don't force it or erase it too quickly before they're ready. Give them choice. See, one of the key ingredients in trauma, when we talk about what is trauma, it almost always includes a significant amount of no choice, powerlessness. So if we take away choice, even in trying to help somebody, if we take away somebody's choice and try to force them to get help too early, in many cases, we are recreating trauma. So it's very important as family members and as a therapist that you honor and give choice to the person who was hurt. Because if you take that away, even if your goal is to try to help them, you're recreating trauma. Some of the original trauma you're bringing back because it involved no choice or less freedom. What is the best way to interact with my brother when he gets home? Ask questions. Be curious. And tell him how you feel. Those are my two rules. The first one is kind of two rules. Ask questions and be curious, and then tell him how you feel. If you're scared, if you're confused, if you're unsure, if you are curious, if you're sad, if you're worried that he's going to go back to the old ways, tell him about it. So ask lots of questions. Ask how you can help. Ask what it was like for him. And then tell him how you feel. And ask him if he can just listen to that and understand where you're coming from. He'll know. They get really, really good at listening. But when you tell him your feelings, ask him, use this word, your parent will remind you. Tell him to reflect it. Say, I'm going to tell you how I feel. Will you just reflect it when I do? And he'll just hear you. So be curious, ask questions, and then tell him how you feel and ask him to reflect it. To just listen. That's the best ways that I know how. What are some ways that normal, quote unquote, siblings can experience healing from hurt caused by the sibling who has caused pain for so many years? Is this possible to occur, and at what facilities is this healing and restoration? In my book, I talk about the place that I went to. I went to a place called Onsite in Tennessee. We've also created our own workshops like the ones that I've mentioned several times during here. So that can be helpful. We and Onsite in the Meadows in Arizona and the Refuge and Spirit to Spirit. There are all kinds of places where you can go do your own work. 3-4 days. I think the one out in Pennsylvania called what's it called? Caring Foundation. They have one called Breakaway. If you have a consultant, if you have an educational consultant in your family, they can give you the names of some of these places. And Evoke has these individuals for these individual intensives for anybody that come. It's where we do healing. All of these places work with trauma. And it doesn't have to be, we call it big T trauma and little T trauma. And so you go to sort it out. You go to learn how to feel. You go to learn to let go and to unburden yourself. You go to sort out some of your anger in some of these places. So those are some great places. Al-Anon or Codependence or Families Anonymous is also a free service in almost all cities across the country. Those are also places to do it. And then the therapist's office is a place to do it. But most of us need help. Most of us need, even the siblings, you don't listen to me all the time. I've been going to the same therapist for 17 years. And I've been going to therapy most of my life. And I'm not in crisis. I'm not struggling. I'm as happy as I've ever been. But I don't go there because I'm weak. I go there because I'm strong. I go there because I can ask for help. I go there because it's better than just working it out on my own. It's like going to a trainer versus going to the gym. And I've done both. You go to the gym, you can work out. You have a trainer who can push you, who knows something you don't, who changes things up, who asks you to do things that are uncomfortable. All of those things are helpful. So some of these things that I've mentioned, ask your consultant, go to the Evoke one, go to therapy, read a book, watch some of these webinars. But those are the facilities that help with that. And the Finding You Intensive for siblings is a fantastic one for this. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful healing, powerful spiritual experiences at these places. Really, and my experience is, I'll read this question just a second. My experience is that everybody in this family will be better off. And you'll be thanking your brother or sister because you'll know things that other people who don't go through this don't know, can't know. I was talking to a father today and he said to me many times, but he said, having a daughter that's an addict has changed my life for the better. I would not wish it on anybody, but I have learned more about and he's never struggled with anything particularly, necessarily. But having a daughter who's gone through this has taught me more about relationships and compassion and non-judgmentalness and learning and humility and myself than anything else. And that's also, by the way, my experience. My brother is very smart, but very manipulative. Because of his ability to manipulate, it has taken him a long time to start the process of getting the right help. What can I do to support him and help him continue to get the help that he needs? One time I was actually at one of these workshops myself, for myself, and somebody that said my being smart and being a therapist was getting in the way of my therapy. I shared that feedback with my therapist, and she said to me, I never found it a barrier. In fact, I found it an asset to you getting help. Yes, we can overthink it. Yes, we can be too smart for our own good, right? Yes, we can rationalize or intellectualize the process more when we get into our head and we use our intellect. All of that can happen. But a good practitioner is going to take advantage of that. A good practitioner is going to help you turn your intelligence, even your manipulativeness, if you will, into an asset for you. But we can allow it to become a barrier. And if you don't have the right practitioner helping you, they can be limited and threatened by it for sure too. Be humble. Be on the boat with them. Get in the life raft with them. Share your vulnerable self. Share the broken parts of you. Share I statements instead of you statements. Some of the other stuff that I've talked about on the webinar. Go to some of these meetings. Just don't let them be alone on this journey of healing, this journey of looking at themselves. That's what I would say. I was really worried about my brother. What if he slips back into depression when he gets home? I am worried he might. 12-year-old sister. I'm just thinking for a minute because he might. I think telling him, maybe even in a letter, you can ask your parents if you're allowed to write him yet. I think if you wrote that, you would listen. But tell him how much you love him. Tell him how much you don't want it. And tell him that if he does, that ask him what you can do to help. I think the worry is real. And depression is hard. All the stuff that we're talking about is hard. And we can't control it. We can just love them. We can just share with them. We can just be open. We can give them the support that they ask for if it feels good to us. and then they got to figure it out, right? They have to figure out how to help themselves. So just like a parent, you can only do what you can do. And on your side of the street, in your circle, you can share with them how you feel, share with them that you love them. Don't be judgmental. If you get angry or frustrated, maybe talk to somebody else first because they're angry and frustrated themselves. Um, they probably don't need a lot of that anger and frustration, even though it might feel like it. But you need to talk to somebody about it. So talk to a parent or somebody else or a therapist yourself. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for the question. Is Evoke something we can mention to others outside of the family or even in-laws while my sibling is at the program? We want everyone to be on the same team, but we don't want to stigmatize my sibling, 27-year-old sibling. Ask your parents and ask your sibling perhaps, but I share this with everybody. When my son went to our program, I don't think of it as stigma. Just like if my son had cancer, I wouldn't think of it as a stigma. It's okay to have a dialogue. But in most cases, this is interesting. In most cases, over the years, the fear of a family member to talk to people about this for fear that they might be creating a stigma for their sibling was understood by the sibling who's in treatment to be their shame. You're just afraid to tell people because you're embarrassed. You're just afraid to tell people because you're ashamed of me. So that's the irony of that question. Most time, what we try to teach is what's the shame in having a struggle? What's the shame in having not enough serotonin or dopamine in your brain, right? Of having something in your brain that's not working, of having pain or trauma or hurt that's coming out sideways in this way. There's no stigma in that. There's no trauma in that. I think we have to do a lot to talk about how, what do we do to support our family members who are struggling in some of these areas sometimes is oftentimes inadvertently, accidentally shaming. So ask them first, have a dialogue, but you can also, you know, you can also share the story with people that you love and care about because part of it's your story. So, and you can keep it general and you can talk about your work. But in our family, I talk about going to therapy all the time. I talk about going to my own personal workshops. Both of my adult children just finished a workshop, asked if they could go, and neither one of them were in crisis. And both of them looked at their pain, their hurt, their childhood. They looked at me, how I hurt them. But in our family, there's no stigma, there's no shame around any of this. And we've all, in our family, we all struggled with various things. And everybody in my extended family has struggled with one thing or another once in their life. It's just some of them have had the courage to go past the shame, to look at the mess that is human life, and to get help and support. So those are some thoughts about it. But great question. And often, let me just say one thing. I can't tell you how many times people have begun to be more transparent and share about these things as family members or individuals, and everybody comes out of the woodwork and flocks to you because everybody has these problems in every family. Everybody either has somebody in their family or somebody that they love that is struggling with addiction, anxiety, depression, learning disabilities, and associated issues with that. Um, you know, family relationships, conflict. All of, I mean, everybody has somebody. There's this old saying in Al-Anon that part of the craziness is I'm comparing my insides to your outsides, right? Everybody around me looks like they're doing fine. And I inside feel like it's a mess sometimes, or it's hard, or it's horrible. But we're all struggling. So those are some thoughts I have about it. Thank you for the question. Do you address sibling rivalry in Evoke? Yes, for sure. I was thinking about that because how it came up that it gets, you know, as the, yes, I can't tell you how many clients. It must be like at least a third, if not half of our clients will say, I couldn't live up to my brother or sister. Or they were the good one. Or they were the smart one. Or they were the athletic one. Or they were the what, you know, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't be, it happens all the time. I mean, just constantly. It happens in almost every case, really, with our siblings. There's some discussion about that. So, absolutely. We talk about that. We talk about measuring. We talk about competing. We talk about rivalry all the time. What is the best way or things to say in a letter to my brother while he's in treatment? Love first. Make sure that it's coming from a place of love. Don't lecture or try to fix him. Ask questions and share feelings, but make sure that those feelings are also coming or emanating from a place of love. And if you can share with him some of your own experiences of struggle, better. If you can share with him some of the things you might have learned on this webinar or another webinar, even telling him you attended a webinar to learn how you can help and support, wonderful. If you're doing any of your own work and you can share any of that, that's the best. So that's what I would say. It's okay to share your love and concern for what was getting him stuck. What he was struggling with. My brother doesn't see the need to continue getting help post Evoke. How can I help support my brother and encourage him to transition into another program after Evoke? Not much more ways than the way that I just said. Don't lecture. Don't teach. Share your love and concern. Share what you're worried about, and make sure it's I feel. I'm worried. In my experience, I love you. Make sure it's from love. Make sure it's not from I told you so or this is the right thing or let me tell you I'm an expert. None of those things help, as you probably know. So love and concern is the best way. And support. And I'll support you if I can. If I can support you and it feels good and it's healthy for me, I will. You said ask questions in the letter. What do you mean exactly? How are you doing? What are you learning? How can I help you? What can I do at home while you're there? What do you need from me? What kind of things are you learning about our family? What are you feeling? What do you hate about it there? What are you mad about? What are you sad about? What are you hurt about? What have I done to you that hasn't felt supportive? What do you need to tell me that you haven't said? Anything that you're curious about. What have you learned? What are your triggers? What have you learned about why you do what you do? What have you learned that's going to help you after Evoke? What do you think you need? All those kinds of things. All right. Very, very helpful. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Thank you so much, you guys. Let me just go over a couple of our slides, show you a few things. I already showed you these. You can search these on the web for meetings in your area. Follow us on social media. You can learn about us, learn about our stuff, learn about pictures and quotes if you want to on Facebook, Twitter. You can also go to our blog. We also have a YouTube channel, Evoke Therapy. Here's my book. You can read the book. You can buy it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. You can also buy it if you like to listen to books. You can buy it on CD or Audible. You can go to Amazon and buy it there. If you want books on any subject, go to the Parent Alumni Book Foundation page. 10% of the proceeds go to charity, but go to that page. It's the same price as on regular Amazon, only 10% goes to charity. So those are some things also that can help you. I'm going to be in Washington, Baltimore area this Thursday evening, 7 to 9. Contact Stephanie at evoketherapy.com. I'll be in New York City at the Marriott LaGuardia, Courtyard Marriott LaGuardia, 4 to 6 p.m. special time, August 30th, this Sunday. Also contact Stephanie at evoketherapy.com. If you are an 18-year-old or older sibling, you're welcome to come to any of these. It's just support, talking, asking questions, these kinds of things, role-playing, things like that. And then these upcoming workshops. For young adults, the Finding You one is appropriate for you. Finding You is appropriate for any adult. Heroic Parenting for any parent. You don't have to come as couples. You can come as individual parents. You can come as single parents. We have a couple of spots left in the September 10th to 13th Heroic Parenting. I can't tell you how powerful these have been for our people. I can't think of something you can do more that would be more supportive than these things. And if finances are an issue, tell Stephanie, and she'll help you work with us. We want people to be able to do these. I'll let you know when the next parent workshop is up and when the next family intensive called Heroic Journeys is up. I'll let you know when we get those on the schedule. Pursuits is for young adults looking for sober fun, high adventure, rappelling, mountain climbing, canyoneering, kayaking. You can look at our website for more information. The next webinar will be on attachment theory, which is maybe the thing that influences me the most as a therapist. That'll be next Wednesday because I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. And by the way, I'm going to be in New York City helping or attending a workshop of a play called Wilderness that's going to open next fall. It's going to tour the country. It's going to be wonderful. I've seen some of the video and some of the music written for it, and it's going to be fantastic. The producer, On Guard Arts, ENGARDE, onguardarts.org. If you go there, you can learn about the producer of it, and her current play about veterans of the Gulf War is touring the country and winning awards. It's wonderful, great socially conscious theater. I'm going to be looking at that workshop and some of the early previews this week in New York City also. So there's the next webinar. That's when I come back. And then it looks like there might be time for one more question, Stephanie. 5 to 10 years down the line, should we expect Evoke to be part of our collective family memory and something that's talked about? I hope so. I hope that this becomes a point of departure from the old way of living. By the way, now that I have adults on, young adults on here and parents, excuse me, not just parents, the video Finding Joe. I tell so many people to watch this and they never do. It is amazing. It is really a lot of what influences our thinking at Evoke. It's a 80-minute video. No, it's an hour and 8-minute video, I think, about life and about Joseph Campbell's influence on psychology. And Tony Hawk is on it. Mick Fleetwood is on it. Some actors and actresses are on it. Laird Hamilton is on it. It's wonderful. It's an hour and 8 minutes. Finding Joe. You can get it on. You can buy the disc on Amazon, or you can go to iTunes and you can rent it, or just watch the first 5. Just rent it. In fact, if you rent it and you watch it and you don't like it, I will send you your money back personally. Just email me, tell me you're on this webinar, and I'll send it back. But yeah, I hope so. I believe so. I believe that this, for me, the people who go through this process are much richer for it than the people oftentimes who never have to struggle. So that's my experience and the experience of the thousands of families that I've worked with. All right, folks. Thanks, siblings, for joining us. Thanks for your support. If you're allowed to write, if your sibling is allowed to get letters from you at this point, tell them you attended a webinar and tell them some of the things you learned or thought about. Share with them some of the ideas and principles that we talked about tonight. Have a great evening. Look forward to having a sibling webinar every month. And you're also, as siblings and immediate family members, welcome to watch any of the webinars. Just ask your parents for the password. All right, folks. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you next Wednesday night. I'll see you in D.C., Baltimore, or in New York if you're from that area this week. Take care. Bye-bye.